today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Reigning WBC featherweight champion Tiara Brown gets slapped, then cracks back and win over France's own Emma Gongora last night as part of an OTX show. All Tiara Brown needed was a wake-up call on Saturday night before she was able to put her featherweight title defense to bed. Brown, making the first defense of her featherweight belt against Emma Gongora at the Bayou Music Center in Houston, snapped out a slow start to then overtake the challenger and earn a wide unanimous decision. Scores were 100-90 two times and 98-92 for Tiara Brown. So the prediction stuck. I felt that at minimum Tiara could win a points decision, and she did. I did want to close the show and get the stoppage for the fans. Brown 20-0 with 11 KOs said after the fight, but Emma Gongora is very tough and she was game, and I'm with it. France's Gongora 10-4 with one draw and one knockout hit the canvas running, all aggression and activity, snapping a short right hand upstairs and thumping away at the belt holder's body. Brown tried to establish her jab, but Gongora closed the gap and let her hands go to smother the outside work that Brown prefers. Gongora kept coming, and what she may have given away in effectiveness, she initially made up for with volume and grit. But Brown began ramping up her output in the second and third rounds, and her punches were the sharper and heavier of the two fighters. She did outwork me in the first round, Brown said, and then I got slapped by my coach, and I said, okay, it's time to work. It's time to work. By the fifth, Brown had found an optional distance and began landing combinations and hard left hooks that seemed to chip away at Gongora, whose nose trickled with blood. Brown, a 37-year-old Floridian who earned her belt with a split decision win over Australia's own Skye Nicholson in March, fully entered her comfort zone by the fight's second half. She slipped punches and countered, led with her jab, and soon began landing big right hands that, finally, backed up Gongora and took the remaining wind from her sails. Asked if she thought her performance sent a message to the rest of the division, Brown said, I think I put the world on notice when I beat Skye Nicholson for this here belt. I was a major underdog, and now I want all the belts. Whoever. I'm ready. There are only two other champions at this weight. Amanda Serrano currently holds 2 of the 4 major titles at this weight, and the only other champion is Nina Menka, who's got the IBF. But Nina's currently recovering from spinal surgery, so I don't know that Tiara will get the opportunity to become undisputed champion at this weight. I don't get the sense that she's on Amanda's radar. Amanda's already been there and done that as far as undisputed. And we don't know what the prognosis is for Nina Menka and how soon we can expect her to come back. If she comes back and Tiara fights her, I like Tiara to beat her. I like Tiara to win the blue belt from Nina Menka. If by some chance Nina doesn't come back on time and she's stripped of the title, that changes things. Ranked at number 1 is Nigeria's own Elizabeth Oshoba, and if by some chance Tiara had to go through Elizabeth to get that belt, well, that's a very different proposition. Elizabeth is very tall, very long, and very strong for this weight, unbeaten. She's one of the many female fighters that MVP picked up in their recent signing spree. Winning the blue belt from Elizabeth would be, I think, a lot more difficult than winning it from Nina. So there is that to consider. If you're Tiara Brown and you're 37 years old and you're looking for the best opportunities out there, maybe the best opportunity for her isn't even at featherweight right now. Maybe it's at super feather. Recently news broke that Alicia Baumgartner, then undisputed, has dropped her WBC title. Tiara Brown is a WBC champion. Perhaps she can parlay that into a cushy rank upstairs at 130 to fight for that belt. Become a 2-weight world champion. If you can't go for undisputed, and I don't think she can, that would be the next best thing, becoming a champion at multiple weights. And at 37 years old, it might be a breath of fresh air for Tiara to not have to boil all the way down to 126, instead settling in at a more comfortable 130 pounds. Not having to cut that extra 4 might leave her feeling better the night of a fight. More energized, more invigorated. Just a suggestion. Congratulations to her for successfully defending the green and gold title. I felt that she could at minimum win a points decision, and so she did. Upstairs in men's junior middleweight news, veteran trainer Robert Garcia understands why Top Rank keeps Xander Zayas away from Virgil Ortiz. Robert Garcia gave Xander Zayas handlers a pass. If Garcia were working with the unbeaten WBO junior middleweight champion, he too would keep Zayas away from Virgil Ortiz. As much as Ortiz's trainer wants him to get a shot at Zayas' title, he realizes that fight is entirely too risky at the moment for a developing young champion who will become a much more polished product over the next couple of years. Yeah, I look at that as the pot calling the kettle black. I mean, wasn't it Robert Garcia who just the other day was giving reasons why Virgil shouldn't fight Bakram Murtazaliev? Now you want to accuse Xander of being protected. Xander Zayas is a young, talented fighter who just became a champion at 22 years old, Garcia told The Ring. If I were controlling his career as a trainer and a manager, I would do the same thing. I have a really good relationship with Top Rank, and Top Rank is the best when it comes to developing a fighter and protecting him and taking care of their world champions, especially when they're young and when they're still developing. More stones in a glass house for Robert. I would say that Golden Boy does a lot more to protect their fighters than Top Rank does. And who promotes Virgil? Golden Boy promotes Virgil. Garcia himself, a former IBF junior lightweight champion, considers Ortiz the best junior middleweight in the world. Ortiz only owns the WBC interim title, though, and Garcia doesn't envision that changing anytime soon because he doesn't expect fights with Zayas, the winner between WBC champion Sebastian Fundora and Keith Thurman, IBF champion Bakram Murtazaliev, or Terence Crawford. Wait a minute. We already went through why they don't expect to fight Bakram Murtazaliev. Why don't they expect to fight the winner of Fundora versus Thurman? He's got the WBC interim title. That can be used as a segue to put pressure on that fighter. Instead, all I want to talk about is Xander. Xander Zayas of Sunrise, Florida, won the then-vacant WBO title when he handily defeated Mexico's own Jorge Garcia Perez. Virgil Ortiz of Grand Prairie, Texas, is scheduled to defend his interim title on November 8th at the Dickies Arena against Erickson Lubricant. Assuming the favorite Ortiz beats Lubin, Garcia sees a fight with rival Jaron Ennis as being much more likely in 2026 than getting a shot at Zayas. Xander Zayas is a world champion now, but he's still developing, Garcia said. At 22, he's still not at his best. He still has a lot to improve upon and a lot to learn. I would do the same. I can't blame them. I'm not going to be mad at Top Rank, or I'm not going to be mad at his trainer. I'm not going to be mad at his manager, Peter Kahn. Peter Kahn's a good friend of mine. This still doesn't explain why Virgil isn't using his interim title to put pressure on Sebastian Fundora. Many of you already know what I think. I think that behind the scenes, Samson Lukowicz made a deal with Eric Gomez and Oscar De La Hoya of Golden Boy to keep their boys away from each other. So if you see that Team Ortiz are spending a lot more time on Xander Zayas, it's because of that. It's because underneath it all, they know a Fundora fight isn't going to happen because the powers that be don't want it to happen. But this idea that Xander is the protected fighter, buddy, Xander's already fought a former world champion in Patrick Teixeira, and at only 22 years old, he's already fought for a world title, whereas Virgil has yet to have done that at 147, at 154. Unlike Virgil, when Xander Zayas became the mandatory for Sebastian Fundora, he actually pushed for that fight. That's why he's got the brown belt now, because he pushed for that fight. He put the pressure on Sebastian that Virgil didn't put on him for over a year, and he's still not putting any pressure on him. But you're trying to convince me that Xander is the protected fighter? Look at who Golden Boy has their boys fighting. They've got Floyd Schofield fighting Jojo Diaz, coming off a loss. They've got Virgil fighting Erickson Lubin. And you're telling me Xander's the protected fighter. And it's the funniest thing because when they had that back and forth online, Xander never rejected their offer. He countered it. He said, all right, I'll accept, but the fight's got to be in Puerto Rico. At which point, they announced the Lubin fight. So, I mean, really, how serious were you guys about making that fight? So, having been a boxing fan as long as I have, there are certain things that I accept, and I accept that all of this about a Ortiz versus Zayas fight is all intended to be promotion, intended to be build-up for when they do fight, that Golden Boy wasn't actually serious about getting Xander in the ring weeks ago when they made that mock offer. That's just to get the ball rolling and to get people talking. And I've maintained throughout that I don't expect Xander and Virgil to fight at 154. When they do fight, if they do fight, I expect it to be at 160 after they both move up.
Mudslinging is a part of it. Accusing Xander of being a protected fighter and Top Rank of protecting him.
Mudslinging, banter, back and forth is all a part of the promotion. So that's just something you have to accept right now, irrespective of who you're backing, whether it's Virgil or Xander. Things are going to get said and feelings are going to get hurt and there's going to be a swell.
Fans are going to argue with each other. The ones that are in proximity of each other, they're going to get into fistfights. It's going to get nasty, but that's what it's all about. It's all about building the fight because this is not the kind of fight that you rush. This fight could be this era's equivalent of Felix Trinidad versus Oscar De La Hoya, even if one of the fighters happens to be a Joe Nosabo.
That's Virgil.
It's a big fight, not the kind of fight you rush. But what about all this talk about a Virgil Ortiz versus Jaron Ennis?
Yeah, Virgil's got to make it through Erickson Lubin, and Boots has got to make it through Lima. Lima, who says, when I finish with Boots Ennis, people will know me.
Accenting that Lima is little more than a background character in the story of Boots Ennis. At least that's people's perceptions of him. As profiles go, Lima knows that his own flies well under the radar of the average boxing fan. Then again, he also knows full well that profiles don't win fights. Lima, 14-1 with 10 knockouts, popped into Matchroom Boxing's London studio Thursday to make an appearance on the Flash Knockdown podcast and discuss his October 11th matchup with undefeated former unified welterweight champion Jaron Ennis at Philadelphia's Wells Fargo Center. A 32-year-old Angolan, now based in Porto, Portugal, Lima has yet to appear in a big fight on a grand stage against top-quality competition. The closest he has come to any of them, a 10-round unanimous decision loss to Aaron McKenna at London's York Hall 2 years ago in 2023, but that outing also marks the only pro defeat for Lima, who will have had at least one advantage fighting Ennis in his Philly hometown. Their bout will be the first for Ennis at junior middle. Lima, however, has fought at or above 154 for his entire career. I don't have a big promotion behind me like Eddie Hearn in Matchroom, but I want to fight these big names, Lima said. Boots does everything well, but me too. I work hard. I've good footwork. I have an explosive punch. I think they have made a big mistake. After making his first 8 fights in Portugal or Spain, Lima has been on the road ever since, besting several opponents on their home or at least adopted soil. Most recently, Lima clipped Shervontai Koopman in a 9th-round stoppage win in South Africa last May. I like being the underdog, Lima said. I've been to Canada, Germany, South Africa, and the United Kingdom and won. And this is another country to spoil the party. Ennis, 34-0 with 30 KOs, undoubtedly has his sights set on much more high-profile competition at junior middle. But Lima was probably as good a place to start as any after a proposed bout with Virgil Ortiz fell through. After a camp of sparring up-and-coming UK-based junior welter Adam Azim and coming off 4 consecutive stoppages, Lima believes he's more than just a live dog. I want to put my name in history, he said. I don't want to be just the number 1 in Portugal. I want respect. Everyone wants to be a world champion. Me too. When I finish with Boots, people will know me. The fight between Lima and Boots Ennis services as a segue to an Abbas Baru fight. Abbas Baru, who was just elevated to full WBA champion. Concurrently, that same Abbas Baru was just ordered to fight his mandatory challenger, Jermell Charlo, a champion in recess, formerly undisputed at this weight. There's a mouthful.
Now, I've already said it on multiple occasions. I don't expect that fight between Jermell and Abbas to take place because Jermell has been gone too long. And Abbas Baru is not a tune-up kind of guy. He's not a tune-up kind of opponent. If Jermell fights him next, there's a good chance he'll lose.
So you don't expect the Charlo versus Baru fight to happen. What's the point?
The point is, I expect Boots Ennis to beat Lima. Then I expect him to fight Abbas Baru, not Virgil Ortiz. In spite of all the talk from Robert Garcia and people in the boxing industry, I don't expect to see Ennis versus Ortiz anytime soon. I expect to see Ennis versus Baru in the not-so-distant future in the coming year, and all he has to do is make a successful debut at 154 against Luis Lima, who's already been beaten by Aaron McKenna. If you can't make it past an Aaron McKenna, I'm not convinced you can make it past Boots.
You gotta put your thinking caps on, kids. Golden Boy Promotions doesn't really have that many stars, many flagship fighters. Do you really think they want to risk Virgil Ortiz in a Boots Ennis fight? That's irrespective of who you think wins. Do you think that Golden Boy can afford to roll the dice? Do you think they want to?
I don't. I think Golden Boy's plan for Virgil Ortiz is wait for Sebastian Fundora to move up, at which point Virgil will be elevated to full WBC champion. And while they're waiting on that, Boots Ennis will fight Luis Lima. If he wins, he will then fight Abbas Baru
For the WBA title.
That's the pecking order. That is how I expect things to happen at junior middleweight. Now, you can question the aptitude of Luis Lima. How good is this guy really at junior middle? An unheralded opponent who's mostly faced other unheralded opponents. But Abbas Baru, that's a different kettle of fish. That's a different gravy. That is a solid fight for Boots Ennis and what could be his very second fight at the weight.
Little bit of backstory on Abbas Baru. He was an amateur standout, and in the pros, there was some buzz around him over there in Germany, where he's based out of. He suffered a rather controversial loss to Jack Colquet.
Sort of fell off the grid after that, resurfacing in America many years later, beating a then unbeaten Ioannis Tellez for a WBA interim title that saw him elevated to full WBA champion. And Boots is en route to that fight with that fighter.
I believe Boots will end up fighting Abbas Baru before he shares the ring with Virgil Ortiz. And a fight with Abbas Baru, that's no picnic, that's no walk in the park. Stylistically, Boots has the right style for the job. He's a boxer-puncher, whereas Abbas is a pressure guy. But Abbas has more time at this weight.
Much more experience than Boots Ennis at 154. That's going to be a great fight when the time comes.